Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bearcast. I'm Brad Harrison. Each week, I'm joined by husky, hairy, huggable homos who love film to review a movie, sometimes two, sometimes less. Depends on what we're doing this week, and occasionally dish up some film news. I am joined this week by two of my favorite on the whole planet. Jim Pugliafico is here. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is here as well. Welcome, Will.
Hey, howdy, Brad. Howdy, Jim. And howdy, listeners. So glad to have you with us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Or today, or this morning, or this afternoon.
It's time travel. Like, this is the closest to time travel we'll get. Right now, it is tonight. When you are listening to this, listener, it is tomorrow or it is next week. But for us, it is tonight. That's wibbly wobbly. That's timey-wimey.
It could even be 3 years from now, because I was looking at some numbers earlier, and someone listened to our Django Unchained / Silver Linings Playbook double feature, which was like our second episode 3.5 years ago.
Oh, wow. Hey.
That was today. Whoa. That's all.
Deep dive.
Or we could be just stuck in the woods in Burkittsville, Maryland, where time has no meaning.
We could.
Yes.
And speaking of that awesome segue, we have a big show this week. We're going to be reviewing Blair Witch. It's better or worse than the Blair Witch Project that spawned this film. I don't know. We'll talk about that. But it's also a time for celebration because you guys, it is our 200th episode. Can you guys believe that? 200. I couldn't resist.
Coming up forever. And here it is, 200 episodes. The Bicentennial Bear episode.
Oh, the Bicentennial Bears. I like that.
No, it's good.
It's been fun. Like, not only is it like, and we talk about this when we hit our milestones. Oh, my God, can't believe it. How did we get this many episodes in? But part of the process the last few days or the last few weeks, it's been really fun to like, okay, guys, we're at 197. Okay, guys, we're at 198. Oh, guys, we're at 199. It's kind of like an advent calendar or something like that, like counting down to this episode. So it's been so much fun, like the build-up.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. The build-up is usually if you take your time and plant the seeds well.
Okay,
whatever.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
In any event, here we are, 200 episodes. We are going to do a little bit of celebration of this milestone because, hey, it's not every day that your podcast gets 200 episodes under the belt. So what we're going to do, we are going to read some listener comments. You guys have been writing in since last week with some of your thoughts, some of your well wishes, some of your MBP memories. So we're going to be sharing those. We're also going to be some ideas. We're also going to be sharing some of our favorite movie memories as well. So I think the best way to kind of kick this all off is a champagne toast. What do you guys think?
I just happen to have a bottle right here. Look at this.
What? Look at that.
Came prepared.
Nice. Look,
you guys ready for this explosion?
You should totally
explode all over again.
Oh, this is going to be amazing.
You should pop your cork online, Jim.
Window right now.
Let me get prepared here just in case there's a minor.
Looks like you've got a towel at the ready to clean up.
What's great here as a viewer, like I'm watching right now. I'm a viewer. That's the role I'm playing right now. This is either going to be an impressive, like oh cool, cork pop and all of that, or there's going to be a disaster. Either way, I'm glad that I'm front row seats.
I'm just waiting for the cork to like shoot up at Jim's web camera and like
take it out.
Sorry guys, 200th episode has been postponed.
It's like we don't have enough technical glitches on this show, right? We're gonna have a self-inflicted wound here in a minute.
Oh man!
All right, here we go. So I know there's going to be a couple of scared cats, but here we go. You guys ready?
Do it.
Ready.
Here we go. Woo!
Whoa!
Yeah. All right.
Nice.
How'd that work?
That was
Hey,
awesome.
It worked great. The sound resonated quite well. That'll really play to our audio.
Definitely.
Nothing really spilled.
Jim, you should pour so we can see it on screen so that our audience can verify it is indeed real champagne sound effect.
All right. Pour it right over my keyboard. Perfect.
It's real
Those
champagne,
bubbles.
not sham champagne.
Okay,
Oh,
stop,
no.
stop, stop.
Oh.
Don't
Oh, there it
overfill.
goes. Oh, it's like the China syndrome all over again.
I thought you might like pour slowly. You know what I mean?
That's not how you pour.
All right,
Just
so-
fucking put it right in my face.
All right, here it comes, Brad. I'm gonna bring it right over.
Oh, champagne delivery by a hot
That's
guy.
right. Yeah. But I mean, this is the way to kind of bring in like I guess close the book on one on one, turn the page on one chapter, move on to the next. 200 episodes in, another 200 or so ahead of us.
Indeed.
What better way to do that than with champagne and wine?
There
Hey!
he is. There he is. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I've got mine ready. My champagne delivery.
Mine's actually a bit of a cheat. I did not have champagne at the ready, but I have some Moscato. So
Hey, that works.
Yeah.
That works.
if I didn't say
Absolutely.
anything, you'd think it was the same on camera.
All right, Jim is coming back. I see him putting his headphones on.
Hold on a sec. I need to get my set resettled here.
Hmm.
You guys ready to toast?
We're ready to toast. Are you ready to toast?
When we're toasting, here's the 200
Grab your bottle of water or your soda or whatever you have. And Jim, toast us in.
All right, here's to celebrating 200 episodes and many more.
200 episodes and many more.
To friends and to film.
To friendship and film.
Hashtag friendship.
To lots of hot berry guys, their admirers, and their love of film.
Awesome. So this isn't like, we're not breaking any rules, are we, by drinking alcohol on the air?
I don't think so.
No.
No. Are you kidding?
Oh, that's right. Will would have been in jail.
Yeah, I'm about to say if drinking alcohol on a Google Hangout / YouTube Live was illegal, every single episode of the show could be submitted in the court of law as testimony against.
Yeah. That's but glad to know, Will, that if one of us is going to be going to jail, it's you.
At least for alcohol consumption on the air.
He drank the most on the show. There's no doubt about that.
Raw healthy liver.
All right, let's do
That
this.
stuff is
Let's
pretty
get
good.
into it. It is really good. Absolutely. Speaking of things that are really good, I've got a listener comment from a friend of ours, Carlos de los Santos, who says, congratulations on 200 episodes, guys. Here's 200 more. Carlos, we adore you. We miss you. We haven't, God, like 3 years, 4 years? When was P-Town, Jim? It's been a while.
Oh, God. It's been at least 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years, whatever. Carlos, thanks for writing in. Toast.
We're due for a trip to New England.
We are. We need to get back there.
See some of
Absolutely.
those guys, Carlos and other friends back there, too.
Well, we will get to some more listener comments here in short order. But I also mentioned we were going to be talking about some of our favorite MBP memories. So, Will, why don't you go first? What's one of yours?
Absolutely. One of my favorite MBP memories actually predates MBP. I want to briefly tell the story of the time that Brad, Will, and Jim all met. And so what's interesting about this story is it was one of those confluence of circumstances, everything kind of crossing at the exact same time, the exact right time. Brad and Jim had to live. Actually, wasn't living at the time. I was at the time as well. And we both knew the exact same mutual friend, this guy named Nakia Reynoso. He was actually on. Yeah, we love you, Nakia. And he was actually on one of our very early episodes when we reviewed a music documentary, and I can't even remember the name of it. But even before that, we all met up through our friend Nakia at this spot in Austin called the South Congress Bridge for this thing called Bat Fest, where we watched the bats fly out and we got to hear music, and we all met up for dinner afterwards and became Facebook friends and interacted that way, just the way you do, the way you socialize with people across the country. And after you guys,
this was pre MBP, right?
This was in 2011. Then fast forward to December of 2012 was around the time when you guys launched the first episode of Movie Bears podcast. This was and by episode 4, we had been talking, and you had brought me on as a guest, and here I still am, 196 episodes later.
Oh yeah, Will, I love that you neglect to mention that we totally started talking through Growler. Actually,
we did. That was part of that. You're right. I forgot about that, but you're right. It was like Brad and I were talking on Growler, and we were both like, "Oh, I'm meeting up with my friend," and we didn't exchange we didn't know that. We're just like, "Oh, I'm hanging out with my friend, but maybe we'll meet up on the bridge later." And then we both walk. I think you were like, "I'm the one wearing the Batman shirt" or something.
Isn't that pretty much a given? Like, come on, the bear community. Can we all kind of meet on Growler or some other bear social app before we actually meet in person?
There's a good portion of that, but this one was just kind of funny because it was almost sitcom-esque. We were both meeting the same group of friends while talking to each other on Growler. It was like this weird triangulation thing that met up right at the bridge itself. It was pretty cool.
That's right. So Nakia and Growler, and Batfest, thanks for bringing us together.
Hey, both Nakia and Growler have been on the show. We need to find a way to get Batfest on the show.
There we go.
Right.
Oh, goodness. Well, yes, definitely so thankful that we all came together that fateful day, even though we didn't start the show thing together till much later. Will, I know Jim and I count you and Wiggles as really good friends. We love you guys, so thankful for that.
I was at Kirby Lane.
That was where our dinner was, Kirby Lane.
That's right. In fact, Nakia not long ago posted a video from that night because there were a bunch
that very
of
night.
Yeah.
Side story from that night. That's the night I met my boyfriend too, because he was also friends with Nakia and also joined us for dinner. So that was the night I met Scott. So
that
was a good night.
The stars aligned for all of us that night.
Awesome.
Thank you, Nakia.
Indeed. All right, Jim, it is your turn.
Let's see. I'm going to go back to another guest we had on the show. One of our first guests, I believe. And I think, this guest is in movies. She's Jessica Cameron, and we found her. Yes, Jessica. Jessica. She is like the horror queen of movies. I mean, she was in some sci-fi movies. She's done her own movie. We got to meet her then through the MBP podcast. This was after we had talked to her on the air about her movie Truth or Dare. We got to see it at the Tucson Underground Film Festival, which I don't even think exists anymore. But that was pretty awesome. I remember clearly meeting her, seeing the movie. They handed out these barf bags full of there were barf bags with the movie's name printed on them and candy and stuff. And it was pretty awesome seeing that movie. I saw Neon Demon this weekend. There's a scene in Neon Demon that reminds me of a scene in Truth or Dare, believe it or not. So there's a connection for you. But hello, Jessica, if you're listening. We miss you. We'd love to touch base with you again, have you on the show. Such a fun guest. She's so amazing to talk to, and a lot of the insights that she gave us about, making movies, and specifically her passion about horror movies, and came out. And then I really loved having her on as a guest, and I hope we do again soon.
Oh, absolutely. I adore Jessica Cameron. It was so funny because she was in Camel Spiders on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Mhm.
And like I remember seeing that movie and thinking like if there's one highlight of this movie, like she's it. But that was before I even knew who she was. And then like
cool.
yeah, and then we end up like making this connection through Twitter and she's like, "Oh, I love bears. Bears are amazing and movies are amazing and I want to talk to you guys." And come to find out like she was the bright spot in Camel Spiders. And yeah, she is so fantastic. And it's funny because like when we went to see the movie here in Tucson, we brought some friends along with us, and one of them was a straight guy. And he's like just sitting there with this distant look on his face. And I'm like, what? What's going on? And he's like, she's one of the hottest women I've ever seen, dude. She's so hot.
That's awesome.
She is very pretty.
I remember being like, you guys had posted pictures of that, and I was like really jealous. I didn't get a chance to meet Jessica. And then at Fantastic Fest, I believe this last year, I see her across the lobby. So I finally got a chance to like catch up with her and get my hug.
Oh, nice. That was nice. Yeah,
Definitely.
Well, we'll have to get her on again.
Definitely. You know, it's how some of these memories are kind of centering around guests. Like, I love looking at your guys' faces, but like sometimes it's good to kind of switch things up, right?
Right.
It just is. Fairly recent revolves around a guest as well. So it's no secret that I am a giant Star Wars fan. Like, I fucking love Star Wars. It's one of the most important things to me ever. And we made a connection with a member of the cast from Star Wars The Force Awakens after seeing the movie. Again, thank you, Twitter, but started tweeting with Anna Maria Leonte, who plays one of the villagers on Jakku at the beginning of the movie, named Prementi. And Jim, I know you were working, and I wish that the stars would have aligned. But Will and I got to sit down with Anna Maria and talk to her about working with J.J. Abrams, being on the set of Star Wars, becoming part of this iconic legacy. And, you know, what was interesting is she just had so many cool stories to share, not just from her time working on Star Wars, but also, you know, growing up in another country and what it's like to come here and try and break into the business. And, you know, when I think back to all the guest interviews we've done, meeting Anna Maria is probably like one of the biggest highlights for me.
Yeah, not only was it like it was a good get for us, like, and that's always a fun thing to do, like to have someone that was part of this new cultural touchstone that like everyone was talking about Star Wars at the time, and probably will every December for the next few years to come. And so for us to be able to interact with someone sort of in real time while it was still playing in some theaters, like while it was still fresh, that was so exciting. It was also really fun for us because that interview kind of marked like I felt really good about us in our interview there. Like, I've gone back and listened to some of our early interviews when we're still cutting our teeth and we're still kind of learning things. And it really is like, tell me how you got into movies. And, you know, we were trying to figure, like, we didn't want to step on toes. We were figuring out like the right, and, you know, we've had a chance to evolve into it. So it was fun to kind of stretch our wings on that one. Yeah, good pick, Brad.
Yeah, Will, you're right. I mean, interviewing is a fine art. I'm still very much a novice at it. But you guys, I went back and listened to the show, even though I wasn't on it, and you guys were amazing on that show, and of course our guest was as well.
Well, we were channeling you because you undersell yourself, Jim.
My spirit was there.
Your spirit was like an Obi-Wan Kenobi Force ghost standing behind us, guiding us through a challenging time.
Ask the leading question, Luke.
Use the Force, Luke.
Oh, man. All right. Well, why don't we go to Will? Will, I think you have a listener comment for us, if I'm not mistaken.
I do. So this comment is from Mike Lovins, who, by the way, love you, Mike. Mike says, "Happy 200th, boys. I stumbled across your channel almost by accident a couple years ago or so, and now look at us. We've shared opinions, screen time, and now root beer too. Love you guys. Keep it up." Thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, like Mike's one of those guys. He's been on the show now a few times with us. Each time he brings something really fun to the table. You guys have had a chance to meet him in person.
Yeah.
He is not someone that I've met across the theater. And
he's a real person, Will. He's a real person.
To me, he is a head in a box right now. I need to meet him in person. And so that's definitely on my bucket list right now. Mike, we absolutely love you, and you'll be back on the show soon.
Oh yeah, Mike Lovins. It's funny that his last name is Lovins because, like, I feel like whenever we talk about Mike, it is a love-in. You know what I mean? Like, he is just one of the nicest, the sweetest guys, and he's really funny too. And what's interesting to me is, like, he's so knowledgeable on so many different topics. Like, he's a big movie guy. You can talk about movies forever, but then, like, you see some random guy wearing a Kiss T-shirt at a root beer stand in the middle of Podunk, Indiana, and all of a sudden we're talking about Kiss shows from 1972 and how many guitar picks the lead guitarist used and what happened when one light bulb flashed and blew and showered sparks. And it's like, you just took me on a journey, Mike Lovins. That was awesome. Oh boy. All right. Well, Mike, we adore you. I hope to have you back on the show soon. Jim, why don't you serve us up with another memory?
I think one of my favorite memories is just from not even a year ago when we got to record an MBP episode, a special episode of MBP, all together at South by Southwest last year. From our studio, from our Keeping It Weird studios, otherwise known as Will's Kitchen.
My kitchen!
in Austin, Texas. I don't know, man. That's just something that feels great about having that. It's like an organic feeling when we're all kind of around one microphone talking about movies, and those non-visual cues are there. We're not like, it's not head in a box like you were just talking about. Plus, it was in the middle of an awesome film festival. We're seeing all these movies. We're very excited. A lot to talk about. No sleep. Cobbling together a technical solution on a computer to run the podcast. It was just a lot of fun. I really like that, and I hope we do that again, maybe even this spring.
I would like that very much. The Keeping It Weird studios are always open for recording sessions.
It's so funny. We were actually we had some friends in from out of town this weekend, and we were talking about the show and how we record the show, and those were our friends Sam and Steve from Denver. And one of the things that Sam was asking us about was, like, Jim and I are obviously in the same house. We're just in different rooms. And he was like, well, why don't you guys always be together on, like, one microphone and then have Will, like, or is it a conscious choice to have all three be separate? And we were thinking about that. And I think kind of what it is it's like when you put two or more of us in one location, there's an organic. Oh my God. There's like an organic
origami,
like chemistry flow. Right. And I don't know. I like when we're kind of in this format. I think it works well. Mm-hmm. But I agree. It made me really wish that we could get all three of us together in the same place more often, because, you go back and, a lot of people access our show through iTunes or Stitcher, right? They listen to it audibly. But I think you miss a lot by not watching it. And so, like, going back and watching that episode, there's just certain things that I pick up on. Like, when Will wants to say something before he even talks, like, he'll reach out and put a hand on my shoulder. And first of all, I'm like, oh, Will's touching my shoulder, schoolgirl moment. And then second, I'm like, oh, he wants to say something. Like, let me wrap my thought up and let this man get a word in. And I don't know. I think it's just so cool to have us together and interacting that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, my goal is to make it out to Tucson here in the next few months. I've got like a third of my work is in Tucson, so I really just need to make that trip pretty soon. I just haven't found the time, but when I do, I'll make sure that we carve out a night to record or see a movie or something in there. Yeah, or both.
Yeah,
absolutely. That would be great.
Awesome. Yeah,
that would be great. All right, excellent. Well, Will, why don't you share a memory?
Absolutely. When I was back on memories, I kept thinking of, like, firsts in terms of, like, our chemistry and things like that. And one thing that I thought was particularly important to flag was the first time that the three of us saw a movie together. This was in 2013. The two of you had come into town for South by Southwest, and it was interesting because that year none of us had full badges. You guys had wristbands. I got a guest ticket for Continental, which filmmaker Malcolm Ingram showed, and that was the first movie that the three of us all saw together. We've since seen several at South by. That's I think we've definitely broken 60 films.
Oh God, yeah, easily.
Yeah, but that was our first, and I enjoyed that experience quite a bit because we went straight from seeing this movie at South by with the filmmaker to then talking to the filmmaker about the film, a film that we all enjoyed, and then we came on the show. We took the content back to the show and had an episode where we talked about it with the filmmaker. There was a lot of great things that spawned from that, but for me, yes, the experience of talking to Malcolm was fantastic and seeing that Continental, and I loved all of that, but also just don't want to undersell, like, it was the first time the three of us sat down and saw a movie together. So lots of good things for me there.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was really cool. I mean, we had met, before, but we started doing the podcast after that. So like when we met again, we'd been doing the show virtually, remotely, whatever, for a while. And it was like, oh man, we get to see Will again. This is so cool. So it was fun hanging out in the line, waiting to go in. And, it was cool because like Malcolm and I had started just randomly talking on Twitter because I hadn't seen Small Town Gay Bar yet. Jim, you and I watched it together on Netflix. And I was like, man, I really want to reach out to this director. So I tweeted him, didn't expect I would hear anything back. All of a sudden, he's like, responding, and he liked the podcast, and he's like, yo, you dudes, I have a movie at South by Southwest. You should come check it out. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And I didn't really think, whatever. I mean, he's a director, filmmaker, whatever. And sure enough, we get there, and he's like, hey, guys, well, I've got tickets if you know anyone that wants to go, and let's go have some beers afterwards and let's hang out. And it was so neat just being able to see this documentary, obviously, at the film festival, but just kind of get to know Malcolm a bit. We've since seen another movie of his, Out to Win, which was at South by just this last year. Got to hang out with Malcolm some more. In fact, Continental hasn't had like a VOD release or anything yet, so you really can't see it right now. Hopefully that's coming. But I did hear from Malcolm that there is going to be a showing at the Art Gallery of Ontario on October 6th. So we've been talking about Continental, which is a documentary about the history of the very famous gay bathhouse in New York. If you're in that area, and I know we have some friends from Ontario that are actually right now, this is a phenomenal doc. If you can get out there on October 6th, it's the Art Gallery.
Yeah, awesome. And I know, meeting Malcolm was definitely a highlight. We got to hang out with him a little bit at South by Southwest. The year he screened Out to Win there. I know he's a friend of the show. He's a friend of ours, and I know he's working on more movies right now. I think he's working on Phantom of Winnipeg, which is a story of the Phantom of Paradise, right? A documentary about that, and so can't wait for that one. And I think we need to start the conversation and get Malcolm on here to talk about his new movie.
I agree. I think that would be fantastic. Well, hey, I want to share a memory as well. About a time when Will and I were not having a good time with each other. It seemed like to some people.
What?
So once upon a time, there was this little known movie that caused a little bit of heated conversation between Will and myself, and that movie was called The Pacific Rim.
I was waiting for the sound drop.
The sound effects aren't working. I tried. What? Google Plus.
Pacific Rim.
Okay, it's not working. All right, let me do this again. It was a little known movie called Pacific Rim. Wow. Google Plus. YouTube Live, whatever. In any event,
some things never change.
So like we're at Bear Week in P-Town. We're staying with Doug Langway, director of the Bear City movies, director and writer. And he had invited us, after being on the show with Garrick, one of the stars of the films. He was like, you dude should totally come to P-Town, hang out with us for the week. It'd be great. So we did. But like while we're there, we're like, well, shit, we also have a show to do. Like we're in P-Town for 12 days. Like we have to record a show. So we're like, well, how are we going to do this? And we're like in this tiny little house owned by producer Jim Landy. Very charming little house, but like there's like 12 guys staying in this house. It's like summer camp. Like, everyone's on top of each other, which is kind of hot. But anyway, so like I'm set up in the living room. Jim is set up like 10 feet away, like in a bedroom, and like we're recording our Pacific Rim review. So like we're talking about the movie, and of course all the guys in the house, some of them are like in the Bear City movies, others are involved. So they're movie people, right? And so like as we're talking, they're like yelling at us. They're like, what do you mean you didn't like that? That was a kick-ass shot. Or, yeah, I totally agree. That's stupid. That sucked. So I think it was feeding off that energy a little bit. And like, if I remember right, Will, you liked that movie a lot more than I did. And I got very negative on the movie. And there's just this point where I think you and I went back and listened to it today. I did. Will, you and I are just like, I think we were getting more heated than we realized we were. And like, we were just trading verbal blows, whatever. And anyway, the guys were like, afterward, they're like, dude, are you guys still friends? Like, what are you talking about? Of course we're still friends. It's like, dude, you sounded like you were going to punch his face in. Like, whoa, that was scary. And so I like followed up with you by Facebook Messenger. I was like, Will, are we cool? Like, I think maybe that was a little more heated, than we normally experience.
I have a feeling my answer was, oh yeah, of course. I didn't realize it. Because from my perspective, because I didn't have the people around behind me, so it was just like, we get passionate about movies on the show, but it doesn't mean like, I can say like, I think Brad's wrong on this, but I don't think like, like Brad's dumb or, it's just like, oh, this is something that we get passionate. We disagree on the thing,
Right.
Yeah. But it's not personal. It's just, and part of it's like, that's the point of what we're here for the show. We're not here to kind of timidly go, well, I respectfully disagree. Like, fuck it. We're planting our flags and going with it. So at the end of that, like when you messaged me, I was just like, oh, I hope that you don't feel like there's something wrong. It was just us just like really digging in and going for it. So.
Yeah.
But
it's funny how passionate we get about movies, because like our head says, hey, everybody's gonna take in a movie in their own way, and they're gonna respond, or it's either gonna appeal to their sensibilities, or it's not, or it's gonna piss them off, or whatever. But on the other hand, sometimes our heart is, oh my God, this movie's so amazing. And if anybody else doesn't feel the same way, fuck them,
Right. Like, how did you not see that?
I am right and they're wrong. There's no doubt.
Fuck them. Yeah, exactly.
But, so that's actually a good warning for like future listeners. If like you ever hear us like digging into each other, don't worry about the fate of the podcast. Right afterwards, we're like, all right, what are we watching next week, guys?
Right.
Like,
Mommy and Daddy aren't fighting so much as they're disagreeing enthusiastically.
Yeah, that's part of the fun. We enjoy. We enjoy kind of disagreeing, going at it. Yeah.
All right. Well, Jim, I think you have a listener comment to share.
I do. Good friend of the show and listener Ben Stark says, happy 200th. He's so glad that Mike Lovins was on the show reviewing The Force Awakens with us and posted about it. He said, that episode is how I found your show. Now, waiting for the show is a big highlight of my week. Love your opinions and getting to share some opinions with all of you, which is what we were just talking about, right? Everybody loves their opinion, and we just want to share it with everybody and get everybody's opinion. Maybe we'll get a slightly different read on a movie that our own opinion didn't allow us to see. But Ben, thanks a lot. We know you're a listener of the show, and we do appreciate you, week to week, like giving us comments and feedback about movies. Because it's nice to know that, we kind of get wrapped up around our own opinions, as we said. It's nice to hear other people talk about them too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I really enjoy reading Ben's comments, and it's funny because like he'll post to our wall, right? And I'll be like, oh man, like I'm totally gonna reply to this. And then like all of a sudden I'll see a reply pop up and it's from Jim. And then another reply, and it's like from Will, and I'm like, all right, I probably don't need to go overkill here. But like his comments are always very thoughtful. He has some really cool opinions on things. And, you know, it's a highlight of my week hearing from Ben and kind of getting that response from him. So love it. And I have a cat chewing on Voltron's sword.
Yeah, Voltron's picking a beating from a cat.
Come on, let's go, you robeast.
from Catatron.
Oh, goodness. Well, Will, do you have another memory for us?
I do. So this one was one I was listening back to some of the intros. I need to go back and listen to the full episodes. Can only listen to so many past episodes in preparation for the modern one. I was thinking back on probably our most prolific guests, and that would be the lovable boys over at the Comic Book Bears podcast. Counting the different appearances where different members of the cast have appeared, I would say that they've probably been the guests that we've had on the most, which is great because we love the boys. It's also very symptomatic of the fact that there's so many comic book movies being made these days. But going back, there were two kind of notable ones that we had fairly early on. I believe our first episode with them, I believe it was the Iron Man 3 episode, which was fairly early on in our overall, the grand scheme of things. And then we had a larger episode later with Man of Steel, which was the one that I particularly wanted to flag because I remember that one was right down the middle. Like when we talk about like, we had some movie bears on one side really loving it, some really hating it. We had some comic book bears really loving it and some really hating it. So there was no formula to it.
No consensus.
But it was a crazy divisive episode. I think there were like 7 of us on that show at the time.
Yeah.
So it was like our first one to really moderate that many people. So much fun, so many different opinions. I love those boys. I love whenever a new comic book movie is coming out because I know that chances are we're going to be talking to them in some capacity again or hearing their feedback on the films that we're about to discuss. So love you, Comic Book Bears.
Oh, man, totally seconded. And we've developed some really cool friendships with some of those guys now. We've had Bill Zanowitz on the show several times, and I love reading his Facebook posts and chatting with him because, again, kind of like Mike Levins, he's one of those that's knowledgeable about a lot of things.
Yeah. Like
comic books, totally his jam. But you know what? You get him started on, 60s psychedelic punk rock Tuesday played on a Friday, some kind of esoteric thing. And this dude just has so much knowledge. It's crazy awesome. But Matt Broussard and Steve Murray and, Justin and those guys are just so much fun to sit down and talk to. I love that our podcast introduced us to those guys and that we've formed some friendships across that aisle and guested back and forth on each other's shows. It's one of the things I look forward to a lot.
And Will, now that we mentioned Bill, don't worry, Bill. We got your request in the back of our head. We're going to have you on a show that's not a comic book movie coming up soon. Maybe a documentary
adaptation.
Absolutely.
No,
maybe it'll be a comic book documentary.
Yeah.
Put Stan Lee's story coming up or something.
Bill does such amazing stuff with his he keeps himself super busy and I admire the hell out of that. Between he's really good at deep cut 80s music. He's someone who can find some really obscure tracks. So he knows a lot about a lot of things.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, did you have a memory you want to share?
Let me see. I kind of burned through mine, but we mentioned Doug Langway and the Bear City guys, right? We talked. We had Doug Langway and Gerald on the show together. I think the first time to talk about Bear City 2 when it was being released. That's the one that was in P-Town and San to run out. We got to meet both of those guys. Well, we actually didn't meet Gerald, I don't think, in person.
No.
But we met Doug and some of the other guys, and man, I just a great memory of having those two guys on the show. I think we had Gerald on the show one other time, if I remember right.
We did, yeah. He was talking about Daddy,
which is now out. So we need to check up on that and see where we are. But yeah, those guys are great. They've got a new movie out now, Bear City 3, that's making the rounds at festivals. I don't know if it's available other than certain special screenings. But yeah, love those guys. I love that series of movies. And it's a special memory for us kind of meeting those guys.
Oh yeah. And again, like looking back through the history, like our interview with them was like our 7th episode or something. And again, it was just, the bear community is sort of crazy small. Like you talk about 6 degrees of separation of Kevin Bacon or whatever. Well, in the bear community, it's like 1 degree of separation. Like this friend knows
1
that
degree
friend knows
over
that
a
friend.
plate of bacon. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So a friend was like, dude, like, do you know Doug Langway who does the Bear City movies? And we're like, no. He's like, well, I'm sure he'd love to like, talk to you guys about his movie. Like, here's his email address, message him. And we're like, really email this guy out of the blue? Okay. And send him an email. And Doug's like, oh my God, you guys like totally would love to sit down and talk to you. And, it's just kind of awesome how we kind of randomly fall into some of these things, right? Jim is telling me we're going way over time. Reel it in. But you know what? Fuck that. It's our 200th episode celebration.
Celebration time. Yeah.
We're gonna do what we want. If we only have 10 minutes to talk about Blair Witch, whatever, it's fine. But anyway, Doug Langway, love you guys. And it's funny too, the other thing I wanted to mention, so we were invited to film a scene for Bear City 3.
Oh, yes.
And
that we haven't even seen yet.
That was a fun experience. But we keep hearing from all these friends in all these different cities who have seen the movie. And they're like, oh my God, you guys were in the movie. Like, it's so good to see you guys. You guys were such dorks. And it's like, oh, great.
And I'm like, check out my IMDb page.
So, because of Doug Langway, we all get to say we've officially been in a feature film, which is kind of cool. I like being able to say that.
Because this being our passion and everything, absolutely. Like, that is such a breathtaking, humbling experience just to know that that's out there. And I still need to see it. Like, I'm right there with you. Like, I've had people messaging me like, I just saw you on the movie. It's like, how did it look? How did it go? Like, tell me. Like, paint a word picture.
Right. Of guys who love movies. I have a comment from another one of our listeners, friend of the show, Adrian Charlie, who you're going to get to see
in less than 48 hours. I'll be hanging with Adrian.
He's staying at your house, right? Yes. For Fantastic Fest
for the first night before he has another spot. But the first night, yeah.
Yeah, well, give him big hugs for us. But Adrian says, congrats on 200 more and beyond. By far, my favorite Movie Bears podcast moment was meeting you guys at South by Southwest in 2015. We kept running into each other at the express line in the morning. Jim's smiley eyes caught mine, and the rest is history. Becoming friends with you guys has been a great joy and means a lot to me. We're separated by a great distance, but I can stay close to you guys through your podcast and social media. Keep up the great work. Having fun. Keep doing it. Until next time, our paths cross. Big bear hugs from me. Now, this is such a special comment because Adrian Charlie, you guys, is one of our straight friends from across the aisle. So, yes. Jim, if your smiley eyes started a friendship in that circumstance, that says a lot, I think.
I think what he's saying is I was kind of stalking him.
Is that what it was?
One man's smiley's eyes is another man's stalking.
I was using my straight guy radar on that one.
Maybe that means, Jim, on behalf of all gay kind, you can be our recruiter.
Oh God.
Yeah. Oh boy.
No.
But
oh, go ahead.
Love Adrian and also Bill, those guys on the Green Screen of Death podcast. It's on my regular rotation of podcasts that I listen to now. These guys are awesome. They see a ton of movies. Their passion for movies is incredible. Man, I just love listening to those guys. Not only that, but they throw in some sports too, which I know, which kind of gets me. And Bill's a Red Sox fan, so that's
there you go.
That's even better. But yeah, meeting Adrian was awesome. I think he interviewed us, didn't he?
Yes,
The first time we met him. So,
yeah,
for his podcast, and
which was weird because we'd never been interviewed by anybody before.
Yeah, it's like, who the fuck are we?
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, "Oh, you're from that Movie Bears podcast. Can I get an interview with you guys? Like, let's talk." And I'm like, sure, okay,
yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, sure, yeah. We're standing in line anyway. Yeah, and Adrian does these great little like mini recordings of just like people on the spot at these festivals, and so we got a chance to be part of that. He's at the fantastic festivals that I've seen him at since. I see him talking to people. He's talked with me. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, definitely check it out. I definitely consider, in a lot of ways, there's being another one of the sister shows of our show, The Green Screen of Death. Don't miss an episode. They're fantastic guys. Love them so much.
Oh yeah, love that guy. All right, well, Jim, I think you have a listener comment.
I do. I have one from a friend of the show and a good personal friend, Mick Jones. He says, "Congrats on 200 to my favorite husky, huggable, hairy homo movie bears. Can you each?" And he's got a bit of a challenge for us here, which kind of got me thinking right before the show. He says, "Can you each name one on second thought, unquote, movie you've watched, or a movie you thought was crap until you rewatched it, or a movie you liked until you saw it again and then didn't like?" So I know we've had only a few minutes to think about this, but I'll go first. I'm going to give a quick example of each scenario. The movie that I thought was crap, and I kind of still think it's crap, but I kind of like it. It's like it's crap, but it's fun to watch, is Gods of Egypt. I didn't like that movie that much, but that movie is actually a pretty fun movie to watch. If you go back and watch it, it's probably not as terrible as we made it out to be. It's not great, but it could be fun. And one that we kind of gave a soft pass to because it's kind of like a children's movie. But the more and more I think about that movie, the more and more I dislike it, is Minions. That's kind of soured now that I've had more of a chance to think about it. So what do you guys think?
I'm right there with you on Minions. I remember really hating that movie, and it's like, yes, come to the dark side, 8 Minions with me. What's funny is I think one of the examples I've got is an animated one as well. I feel like we, or at least I, probably overestimated the value of Kung Fu Panda 3 when we talked about it earlier this year. I remember walking away from that, and it was a fairly positive review because the film had some pretty interesting messages, and I still hold that its messages were really, really interesting, and they did what they were supposed to do. But when I go back and think about that movie, and then I immediately compare it to other animated movies that I've seen this year alone, like, it doesn't hold a candle. So it's one of those ones. It was a January release, so I think at the time we were just hungry for anything that wasn't just like a bag of dicks. Like, we wanted something that was like at least passably good. And so Kung Fu Panda 3 hits our plates, and we're all like, like, yes, because it's
like a giant plate of like Kraft macaroni and cheese. Like,
but you know what though? Hold on, friendship. Hold on. So if you haven't eaten a meal and you're starving, and you start eating it, and it tastes so fucking good, and it fills you up, and you have warm feelings about it after, even if you go have another amazing, 1,000 times more amazing meal 3 months later, that doesn't negate the fact that you enjoyed it in the moment.
It doesn't negate, but
right?
or it made you sick the next day.
Well,
kind of going back to Mick's, question, this is the idea of like when we come back to a movie later and our opinions changed on it. And I think that's what this one really is for me. Like, I think that it's easy, and it's hard. It's very easy for us and for anyone to over or underestimate a film kind of based on context. What's going on in our day, what's going on in our month, what's going on in our week, what's happening in film all around us. Am I sick that day? Was the kid next to me in the theater crying? Like, these are all things that can like bump up or down a movie. And I really feel like just kind of that one was a positive beneficiary of not a lot of options playing up against it. If this movie had come out this summer and we had just recently seen Kubo, I think that we would have been walking out of this going like, hard pass, skip.
That's possible.
I don't know.
All right, Brad, your turn.
Or at least for me.
So for me, the first time I saw Beasts of the Southern Wild, speaking of context, I was very tired. We went to a late showing, and I fucking hated it. Hated that movie so much. And Jim loved it so much, and that made me hate it more because I'm like, why didn't I have that experience? But then we saw it. I don't know what, Jim, like 3 weeks later, we went to see it again.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
Because I was like, I was like, wait a second. Okay. Like if Jim loved it that much, I must have missed something. So we went to see the movie a couple weeks after, and I wasn't tired that time, and maybe that was part of it. I don't know. But it just hit me in a way that it hadn't before. And I came away feeling like it was one of the best movies of the year. And so it's kind of instilled this thing in me now where I almost feel like if I hate a movie, I need to end. Because it's entirely possible that like I'm just in a Brad mood. Maybe I'm hangry. I don't know. And like, maybe it's not as bad as it seemed to me. Another good example is Frozen. We saw Frozen as part of a press screening. And there were all these families with their kids that got like radio station tickets. And, I hated the movie so fucking much. I thought the music was terrible. I thought it was too poppy. I hated all the kiddiness to the movie. I was like, get me the fuck out of here. I'm done with this shit. And then we went to see it the weekend after because Beasts of the Southern Wild rule. And I was like, oh my God, I love the music. This is so great. And I love the kid stuff. And the snowman makes me so happy. And, just totally turned it around for me. So,
which is like another one of our MBP memories, which is that time where, Brad, you got so hooked on the Frozen songs, which obviously wouldn't have happened if you hadn't given it another shot, that we worked it into, I feel like about 2 months worth of episodes, we found a way to work Let It Go or some other song somewhere in there. It was the thing. It was the hot thing.
That reminds me, Will, I totally have a question for you, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you want to build a snowman?
Aww.
Come on, let's go and play.
Oh, is this the musical episode?
It's totally
episode of MBP. We sing a review.
One day we're gonna have one of those, definitely. Hey, I know we're going way over, but just a couple more things. I want to share a memory that I have of someone who is still with us in spirit. He is still alive, but he is someone that we dearly miss on the Movie Bears podcast. You may remember the sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast. And of course, I'm speaking of Chris Lopez, who was with us for a time. How long was he with us? Like a year and a half of shows? I think it was a good
clip. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
The years have turned into like this long stretchy blur. I don't know.
They have, but Chris is one of those guys. I actually met him on another show where we were both co-hosts for a brief time, and he is just so knowledgeable about movies. And he's one of those guys where like he and his partner both, they are just so nice, so fun to talk to, so fun to look at, and he has a really sexy voice too. So Chris, man, we totally miss you. We need to have you back for like an MVP reunion. I know you've got a billion things going on in your life, which is why you kind of had to step away, but I totally need some Chris Lopez.
Yeah, I definitely hope we get him back.
Co-signed.
That would be fun.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, we miss you. Hey, to kind of close things off a little bit here, Will, did you have any other memories?
Not as much a memory. I've got one last comment if I can dive into that one.
Do it.
Yeah, so When I think about comic books, the first thing I usually think about is Movie Bears or Comic Book Bears podcast. But the second I also think about is a friend of the show, and I know a friend that you guys have met and hung out with in real life. I haven't had that luxury yet, but it's Francisco Salgado. Congratulations on your 200th episodes. Thanks a lot for all the reviews and for the inspiration to start my own movie reviews. Here's to 1,000 more. Like, that type of comment is one that like kind of hits me in my heartstrings, because we all have to get our motivation from somewhere. We got it from our own places in our lives, and just to find out that we've helped inspire someone else to go on this path themselves, like that is humbling. We absolutely adore you, Francisco. We know that you'll be back on the show sometime soon.
Yeah, we definitely heart us some Francisco Salgado. That guy is amazing, and he's got some really great movie reviews of his own. He mentioned them. We'll have to put a link on our wall or something, but he does some great reviews. You guys definitely need to check them out for sure. So, Francisco, thanks for writing in. All right, last comment is from Tom Miller. And I am so happy every week to see you guys talking movies. He wrote this earlier when we were talking about Star Wars. He says, Star Wars is the best. He says, I'm loving your podcast. And then he says, Jim and Brad, you guys are too cute.
Aww.
Tom Miller. Oh, goodness. Good to hear from you. Well, guys, we apportioned like 30 minutes to talk about this stuff, thinking we're not going to even take up 30 minutes, and it's been an hour.
Almost an hour, right?
But you know what? Here's my thinking. 200 episodes doesn't come along often. It takes us, almost 2 years, right? 52 weeks in a year. We record every week. It takes us about 2 years to hit every 100 episode mark. So you know what? If we had an extra long session after 2 years, I think it's fine. I'm good.
That's worth it. It's worth it.
We love talking about films. That's what we do here. I think there's some value in us doing exactly this, which is taking a moment, reflecting, because when we look forward to the future even more with clearer vision. So I love being able to do this, and doing it right at a milestone makes sense.
It's so funny. I mentioned this in the Facebook chat earlier, but we just watched Friday's Big Brother last night, and it's that episode where it's the filler episode before they go into the finale with the last three, and they're all sitting around the table sharing their favorite.
Hey guys, remember the time that?
Yeah. Right. So I'm like, oh God, please don't let this episode sound like some kind of staged, pat on the back bullshit. But for me, it's,
this is impromptu pat on the back bullshit.
It's just, I don't know. There's something.
Theirs is way more staged than ours.
There's just something nice about, hearing from our listeners and just kind of sharing some of our favorite moments from the show. And I tell you, every week we do this, right? And we've got our 4-year anniversary coming up in December. So it just kind of boggles my mind, you know what I mean, that we have been at this as long as we have. So a lot of folks have said, here's to 200 episodes. Hope we have, 200 more. I would love to see that. Maybe we'll be doing this 12 years from now. Guys built up underneath us. But
one form or another.
Maybe, absolutely. But Will, I think we had one last comment. Speaking of 4-year anniversaries from someone, if you want to share that, and then we will move forward.
I do. One last comment to share, and this is from David Goodman from Bear World Magazine, which is also celebrating its 4th birthday. He says, congratulations, guys. Yeah, absolutely. Bear World Magazine is an outlet that we've considered a partner in crime, so to speak. We write it for we don't really talk about this a whole lot here on the show, but we have a written version of our review at Bear World Magazine every week with a link to the video. So this is something fantastic. You should go check out. You should check out their site. You should listen to our show. Vice versa. They feed each other.
Absolutely. Love David Goodman. Love me some Bear World Magazine. They've got a lot of great articles every week. It's in a digital format now. So you don't have to wait like for once a month for it to come out. Like it's all there. You can access it at any time. And yeah, definitely love collaborating with those guys. So
hey, not every magazine has Movie Bear movie reviews in it, right? Like how many magazines have that? I bet that's the only one.
Indeed.
So you need to check that out.
All right. Well, guys, it's been fun, but we still have a movie to review. So how do we feel about putting a fork in it, at least until our next 100 episodes, and maybe moving on? Are we good with that?
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right. Awesome. Well, then we are going to go ahead and switch gears. Hey, if you are one of our newer listeners, maybe you've tuned into us for the first time and you're not familiar with our format. When we talk about a movie, we like to talk about it spoiler-free for a little while. Give some thoughts, whether we think it's worth checking out, whether it's worth your time, worth your money, and then we give fair warning before we take you to the deep, dark, scary woods of Spoilerville. So, all that said, feel free to hang out. If you have not seen Blair Witch yet, we'll give you ample warning before we start spoiling things. Mm-hmm. But we are going to go ahead and review Blair Witch. So, Jim, why don't you? I don't know. Will someone's got to talk about this movie? I don't know what to do. Oh my God!
I want to do this intro, but I'm so sorry.
Brad.
Will! Jim, are you out there? Oh my God! Okay.
90
okay.
Minutes.
I think we're feeling a little fucking punchy right now. I don't know.
Should start every episode with the champagne toast.
We apologize to anyone who has motion sickness that we totally just made puke all over your computer screen because you were watching the show. But that was kind of funny. Anyway, hey, Will, why don't you give us a little bit of setup for Blair Witch and whether you think it's worth checking out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first thing you've got to know about the Blair Witch is, or Blair Witch, is this is a sequel to the Blair Witch Project from 1999. The film about the Blair Witch Project and its importance, its legacy, its viral marketing that went crazy, and just how much of an important film it was for its time. Then there was a really crappy sequel that was that didn't go over very well, and then nothing until this film comes out this year. Blair Witch, the description of it, and I'm yanking this straight from IMDb. After discovering a video showing what he believes to be his vanished sister Heather, who was the main character of the Blair Witch Project, James and a group of friends heads to the forest believed to be inhabited by the Blair Witch. So, one thing that I think is sort of impossible to do is to completely divorce this film from the original. And the reason I say that is this is a film that relies on the experience of feelings. The marketing, everything that we equate with the original film is part of the baggage that comes with the name Blair Witch. It's why people show up to the theaters or didn't show up to the theaters. Like, that's part of it. So I think it's unfair to completely divorce itself from its name. That's part of its legacy. I think as far as horror movies, Lost in the Woods, found footage movies, I think it's perfectly serviceable film. I think it does what it does well enough. I enjoyed good portions. It inspired anything new in me. It didn't rewrite the rules of the game. It didn't do any of those things. So by comparison, it is a less important film than the Blair Witch Project, but it was always going to be, and I think that that's just a part of the discussion that I think is going to muddle things quite a bit. So at this point, I'm going to look at the film just as it is, without the stigma or the baggage from the original. And I think it's perfectly serviceable. It's perfectly passable. I think Adam Wingard, he's a director that I absolutely adore. This is the guy that makes such amazing films as The Guest, which I think is highly underrated. I don't think enough people were talking about that film back in 2014. You're Next, which I should have answered that to Mick's question earlier. That's a film that I walked out of the first time and was like, that was all right. And I had an appreciation for what he did in that film over the years, and certain segments of VHS. So this is a guy who is one of the most important young cutting-edge voices in the thriller horror genre. I think he does a good enough job with The Blair Witch. I don't think that it's going to be a film that we're going to be talking about in a year. A lot of ways, this is sort of a remake of the Blair Witch Project, and we'll talk about why that is when we get to spoilers. I don't want to go too much into those points. I think if you can watch this movie and, as much as possible, divorce yourself from carrying some of that baggage into the theater with you, I think you'll enjoy this just fine. I think if they had called this movie something else, if this movie had Woods, which is what it was originally called when it was in production and had everyone hyped up for, I think that we would be talking about this film, and by we, I mean critical consensus, everybody, with much more positive reviews than it's been getting. I would say it's a soft recommend. Certainly does the trick. Some of the scares are effective, characters are effective, and some of the new things they do bring do kind of work. But at the end of the day, it's not a film that I'm gonna like remember warmly like a year from now.
All right, so soft recommend from Will. Jim, how about you?
Yeah, Will, I agree. I mean, if somebody could go into this movie not knowing much about the original Blair Witch, maybe not even have seen the Blair Witch Project back in 1999 or since, I think this movie might do something for them. But for me, like you said, I can't really separate that from the previous movie. And I wanted to see, a rising, very talented director, Adam Wingard. I wanted to see, with some cool new ideas, I wanted to see what he could bring to this movie, and I was excited for that. But we didn't get any of that, unfortunately, I don't think. I think we got mostly a rehash of what we got in the first movie. It's updated, yes. There are some things I think that are improved. There are some things I don't think they bothered to improve on at all. I think the ending, which we'll get to in spoilers, I think is probably the strongest point of this movie, because it's stronger than the ending of the original movie to some degree. It's the same ending, but it's stronger in a way, I guess. There's more of it. Let's just say that. This movie is a sequel only in that this movie acknowledges the happenings of the first movie in this movie and references it as something that happened in this universe. And that's really the only thing that makes this a sequel. The story is basically a repeat of the first movie. We'll get into more of that in spoilers. For me, I mean, it's a pass for me in the movie theater. I would say you don't have to spend money in the movie theaters to go see this. If you really want to see something that's going to thrill you or scare you, I would go see something like Don't Breathe before I would say go see Blair Witch. Blair Witch, you could probably... it might be a good movie for like a VOD night with friends, a Redbox night with friends to watch and kind of compare it to the old one and have a good discussion about it. The acting in this, I think, was mostly competent, but mostly forgettable. No real standouts for me. I noticed that there was a lot of more emphasis on sound design and scaring the audience through loud noises. And jump scares in editing. I mean, they did some tricks with editing found footage. This isn't Wingard's first foray into found footage. Your Next and The Guest were regular narrative movies, but his entries in the VHS series, I think, were found footage. So he's got that under his belt, and he knows how to use the editing process to kind of enhance what would normally be like a jump scare in other movies. It's just kind of a shame that this being kind of a new, much hyped, fresh start on Blair Witch, and then essentially not really doing much with it. It feels like a wasted opportunity for Wingard to kind of really show the talent that he has. I think this movie, in my mind, I wish they had made the prequel. They talk about the story of how the lore and the folklore of how the Blair Witch came to be in that part of Maryland or whatever in both movies, in the Blair Witch Project in 1999 and in this movie. some of the characters set up, oh, well, legend has it that the witch was this and this and this. Make that movie. That would have been a great companion to the first movie, but not this. This was, I think, a wasted opportunity. It's a pass for me, and we'll get more into it in spoilers.
Which leaves it on my shoulders. So we've got a pass from Jim, and we've got a soft recommend from Will. Yeah, it's a pass for me. Sorry. Let me just say this. I wasn't a huge fan of the original anyway. So it's not like going into this movie, I had super high expectations for it. So, I get that he's an up-and-coming director and he's doing cool things. And I did love You're Next. I thought that was a great movie. In fact, of the three of us, I think I was the one who liked it best when we talked about it on the show. But man, this movie, I mentioned my kind of rule earlier about like, if I hate a movie, I think maybe I should go see it again because I missed something. But you know what? Fuck that rule because I'm not going to go see this movie again.
Well, that's a hard rule. That's a hard rule to follow through with. Like,
yeah,
it takes a certain amount of like something to go back and watch a movie that you think you hate.
Yeah.
Time and money that no one has. We'll add that to the list of things.
I don't know. Maybe I'll watch it like with some friends, like you said, Jim, and Will. Like maybe we'll have a scare bear movie night or something. Like and invite a bunch of people home. Build a fire afterward or something. I don't know. Maybe I'll like it better. But seeing it in the theater last night, it's just more of the same. And yes, it's updated graphics and effects, and there's some cool new things in this one that the old one didn't have. But I should have fucking known I was in trouble when the girl is flying her DJI drone around like without its RC controller. Like she's just got her phone like flying the drone around. And it's like, no. Your phone acts as the screen for the controller. Like it does not control the whole drone. And I don't know. Maybe that's douchey because like we're drone people and like only we would probably choose to pick that out as a nitpick. But I was just kind of like, really? Like, why couldn't you show the RC controller?
You get stuck on these points, like, and that's it.
Right,
you're done.
Right. I'm like, really, director? Like, why would you make a choice not to show the RC controller, and then you make all these other stupid, dumb, fucking choices? Like, it just boggles my mind a little bit. I was actually talking to our new friend Darren from Ontario, of Darren and Walt, earlier about this movie. We were kind of chatting about it a little bit, and it's like, I don't know. We like some of the stuff from the first film, right? And it's kind of interesting to see them kind of play around a little bit with the location and time. And he had kind of reminded me that that there was some like space warping or something going on in the first film, which I guess I didn't quite remember. So coming out of the film last night, I'm like, oh, Jesus, this is so stupid. Like, this is dumb. Why even like introduce this new concept? And then Darren was like, oh, but they did that in the first film. Like it's a thing. And I'm like, oh, right. So I'm giving it some points back. Jim, I know we had a conversation about it in the car last night.
Wait. Let me get this right. So you would take away points if they tried to do something new, but you're giving points back because they did the exact same thing that they did in the first movie? I am not following that logic.
I was taking points away because they did something I thought was new that just didn't work for me personally, and made things more confusing and not as fun for me. But I have to give the points back because you know what? They're staying true to the universe, the world that they built way back when. So, yeah. I don't know if that makes sense. Whatever, but
they set the rules and they follow the rules.
Work hard. You allocate the points as you damn well please.
Right. So originally this was going to be a hard pass, but now it's a soft pass, I guess. I don't know. There's some things that are kind of fun in this movie. It's very claustrophobic. And how you can make like being out in the woods a claustrophobic thing is kind of neat that you can do that because it's a big space. You've got lots of trees and stuff, but they do a lot with like depth of field and lighting that I think is really kind of neat to see. So I don't want to shit all over the movie. I think there are some cool things. The sound editing, really great. I think the sound editors really earned their money on this one. But one thing I do want to say is anyone who has issues with motion sickness, the first movie kind of made me queasy. Cloverfield
it made news for that. It made the news
queasy,
for that.
right. This movie last night made me violently ill. Like at one point, I seriously thought I was going to throw up in my seat. And I was like, I need to just sit back and close my eyes for 10 minutes, or I need to like get out of here.
Get the popcorn bag and do it.
Yeah. So I would just say if you haven't seen this movie yet and you're kind of on the fence, if the shaky cam of the first one kind of messed with you a little bit, please know you're probably going to be hurling your guts out if you go see this movie. So just plan accordingly. Maybe take a few breaks where you just close your eyes once in a while. You listen, rely on your ears, and then reapproach. Because yeah, I don't know. Are either of you sensitive to like the motion at all? Am I the only one?
I'm not. So when I heard you say that right now, it was surprising to me, but also like I don't have that point of reference, so it would have been surprising if you'd said that about any movie because I don't have the motion sickness. I'm the type of guy who like I'm on a road trip, I've got a book, I'm reading it. It doesn't affect me. So yeah, that's actually a really good point to bring up because it's not something that I factored in at all.
I get it a little bit, but not in movies. If I was to read a car in a book, read a car in a book. Wow. If I were to read a book or something in a car, I might get a little motion sickness, but not really in movies. It did annoy me though, and it shouldn't because I kind of know what to expect. It's for people who are going off to film a documentary, right? In this movie, they were like some of the shittiest camera operators that there ever was. So I'm just saying, even when they weren't being chased by whatever, I mean, they were bad.
To be fair, though, and here I am giving it points. They're students, Jim. They're learning to be filmmakers,
and I think that's it's with found footage. You kind of run into this damned if you do, damned if you don't type circumstance. Because I've also seen the same argument kind of flipped on the other side, like. I know that's supposed to be found footage, but the shots just look too clean. Everything looks too polished. It doesn't look believable like it's just some dude's camera. Like I've heard people say that about other found footage as well. So if you're going to have these students, I think you've got to make it look choppy. You've got to make it look – I mean, hell, even the first one, the Heather, the girl in that, like she tries to do some like line delivery like as she's doing her narration, and she intentionally delivers it like a shitty actress. Because it's to make it look a little like a little realistic and not polished.
Well, guys, I think now is a good time to go into a brief spoiler section. So we're going to make that transition. If you've not yet seen Blair Witch and you don't want to be spoiled, now's your chance to step away for 5 or 10 minutes, come back for plugs, or fast forward if you're listening on digital tape delay. Jim, you're laughing. Tell us about that.
I'm like, well, if you've seen the first movie, you cannot be spoiled with this one.
That's not.
Well, I would slightly disagree with that.
We can talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we spoilers now?
Spoilers are officially fair game, boys. Where do you want to start?
I think the reason that I would say that it wouldn't necessarily, and I guess we've kind of already spoiled it by saying it, but I think until you start to realize that this film is traces the same steps as the first one, for me, if I had known that going into it, I would have felt that was like a spoiler because I didn't quite realize that until about midway through as we start seeing some of the same things. Going into it, it was kind of a blank slate. I just knew we were revisiting this franchise. I did like very, very much the way they revisited some of this stuff. I felt like the sticks that were just things that hung around and sometimes had like clothes and hair on them for some reason in the first one. Now we understand what they're there for, and what they're there for is to be one of the coolest scenes of the movie for me personally. Like when
the body horror,
she snaps the stick, and the girl that had her hair fixed into it snaps in half. It was like a voodoo doll. that blew my mind. Jim, you mentioned before that the ending sequence, when it gets to the house, it's the strongest part. I 100% agree. And Brad, you mentioned claustrophobic. Probably the most claustrophobic scene in this, and probably the best scene in the movie, like hands down best, is the tunnel sequence. So freaking scary. So I think that if someone had told me, like, the movie is going to end in the house, and the movie is going to have the tents, and the movie is going to have all of these same things, and it's going to follow the same basic footsteps as the original, I would have probably felt spoiled going into this one, just because, again, I didn't know that that's what was happening until it actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, one of the weirdest things about this movie for me and the previous one is I know there's supposed glimpses of the witch, the Blair Witch, in this movie and in the first one maybe, but I don't know. I mean, people complain about movies, monster movies or whatever, if they don't see the monster. Like, and this movie shows you maybe a total of a half a second of witch or monster in this movie, and it just didn't give me enough dread to make me scared. Even during, I mean, the tunnel sequence was cool. I think the way it was shot, and that's that feeling of claustrophobia. But I don't know, the threat. First of all, you knew all these people were going to die at some point. You knew they were all going to get it, right? So I don't know. A lot of the tension is gone for me. Like, okay, they're all going to die. Let's just kind of wait until loud noises happen and they die. I don't know. It just didn't. There wasn't anything like that fear of the unknown for me.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. And I think a lot of that has to do with, we've seen the first movie, right? I mean, this recreates sort of a lot of that. And in some ways.
Yeah, and I get the concept that it's supposed to, follow the footsteps of the first movie. These kids are kind of they're in a trap, and they're destined at some point to meet the same fate unless something weird happens, which it didn't happen in this movie. The same things are going to happen. So all you do is watch those things play out. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's effects and the shaky cam and all that stuff, and lightning and screaming. A lot of screaming in this movie, but none of it was super scary for me. And this movie's supposed to be scary.
There was one part where I actually laughed. I don't know if you remember it, Jim. But this whole time and space thing has been going on through the whole movie, right? Like, it's been dark for 3 days, and one, the two people that left partway through the movie, they've only been gone for an afternoon, but when we run into them again, it's been 5 days or whatever, right? So time and space are totally being played with. So they're up in the attic of the house, and there's this white light outside and this loud noise, and I'm like, oh my god, I totally get it now. The island just moved. It's lost. And I was like,
oh wow,
I was laughing so hard.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Yeah, I think there was a lot of moments in this that I did think were pretty effective as scares. Specifically, again, that ending sequence. They start to establish this rule of the witch, which is you can't look at her. You can look at her through camera or whatever, but you can't look at her directly. And we also know that she can manipulate her voice to sound like things. So that last little sequence as they're in the attic was terrifying. And again, that tunnel sequence as she's crawling through and you think something could grab her at any moment. I'm glad nothing grabbed her while she was down there, because I think if so, it would have pulled the tension right out of that scene. Instead, I felt frayed by the time she finally, not afraid, but like a rope. I was frayed by the time that she emerged at the end of it, because at every turn I was expecting something to happen, and it never did. I thought that was incredibly effective. But there was a lot of build up to get there. There were some spots in kind of the middle of the movie that that I think didn't work as well for me. Primarily, there was a supporting character. Her name was I don't remember her name. Lisa? No, not Lisa. She was the main girl. Ashley.
Ashley
Cuts her foot and gets the bug in it, and it becomes like a weird stick thing.
Or body horror.
Yeah. And then she disappears fighting the. Her whole storyline felt extremely superfluous. It didn't add anything. It just called back the drone, which was already busted, and it added this weird like cut, injury, sickness thing that didn't really have any like payoff at all. You probably could have cut the Ashley character entirely and been totally fine. And if you have a quartet of 4 characters lost in the woods, and you could cut one of them without the storyline changing, chances are there's a script issue there. I think they could have reworked her.
Well, and they call back to the drone, and it doesn't, again, like the drone doesn't make any fucking sense because one, Ashley all of a sudden has Lisa's phone, which can control the drone. Like, did I miss seeing Ashley like get Lisa's phone somehow? Like, Ashley's like crawling up through the tree with the phone, and I actually thought it was Lisa for a second. I'm like, wait a second, why is she going up this tree all of a sudden? And then I'm like, wait, oh no, it's Ashley, but she has Lisa's phone. And then the drone has been like crashed in this tree for like 2 nights or whatever.
Well, we don't know how much time it's actually been. I mean, remember,
the drone could have been there for minutes.
That's true. Okay, that's entirely possible. Yes, but it was just weird to call back to it at that point, I guess, because like it's crashed. Like, you know, what is she thinking? The drone is like up in the tree, broken propellers, like you hear it like not functioning correctly, and she's thinking she's gonna like fly this thing at night. You can't see anything from the drone at night. Why is she gonna climb like a 10-story?
I have no idea why she was going after the drone.
To get this drone. It makes no sense to me.
I will say that at that point, like, she's delicious, and like, if you're in this like lost in the woods, something's chasing me, something's possibly murdering my friends, I was able to kind of justify that as like kind of a desperation mood. Like, you know, what else is she gonna do? Just keep running through the woods? Like, there's at least something here. Maybe she can do something with it. So I was a little less harsh on her climbing the tree. I had more of a problem with the fact that it was such an isolated payoff for a character that didn't really have much to do with the other 2 main characters once she started getting sick. Like, she felt extremely disconnected to the story, and that was the problem I had with her there.
I did like the addition of the 2 characters that were they brother and sister, Lane and the girl with the purple hair,
Talia,
and kind of introducing them as kind of ambiguous characters. Like, hey, are these people like really there to help and guide these people, or are they nefarious in some way? And I just wish they had followed through on that a little bit more. You know, halfway through the movie they show up again, but it's not. You know, at one point we find out that they were kind of planting some things to kind of enhance the legend, you know, of the witch or whatever, and thought that it would be cool. It would have been nice if they had just done something with that instead of just kind of dead-ended it. I did like that they added that wrinkle though, and I do wish they had shown a little bit more of the witch at the end. I know we just, especially when we had the opportunity with the camera. You know, you're not supposed to look at it, but she kind of had the camera facing behind her, right? And she was looking at the screen. Kind of like, you know, I'm not looking at Medusa, you know,
right, exactly, yeah.
And they had an opportunity to maybe kind of put like a really cool effect in there of like the witch. Instead, what we get is just like some flash of something blurry that, you know, you don't really see. And it felt, you know, a little cheap. And then so what you're left with at the end is like, okay, we just saw the same ending, you know, again to the movie, which we knew was coming from like kind of like halfway through the movie.
Alternatively, you could just not show any of those glimpses of the witch. I think one of the things that was effective about the first film is that while it's a supernatural movie about this witch hunting and killing these 3 people in the woods, when you go back and rewatch it, you don't actually see anything supernatural happen on screen. It happens at night, and then they wake up and see it, or you kind of like you see someone standing in a corner. But we've heard the myth before. Like, you could easily say the Blair Witch Project, the first movie, was about 3 kids who get lost in the woods and succumb to like psychosis or paranoia, and it creates this like tumble down. This film, the Blair Witch, obviously not. We see glimpses of the witch. We literally see some of the supernatural things happening. We see the girl get snapped in half when her totem gets broken. So you could have almost like done, you know, I know, Jim, you said you could have done more. I would have said maybe if you don't do more, do less, you know, like Either
Right.
show more of the witch or show less, go for ambiguity or go for straight.
Yeah, I mean, there was one scene before they entered the house where they showed something behind the tree. And that actually gave me a little bit of a chill, like, oh my God, there is something. You know what I mean? I want to know there is something. I don't want it just to be like this supernatural force that's causing all this. That's not really thrilling for me to see. So the one question I have is, at the end of this stuff, what do we get next? I mean, are they going to make another one of these that does the same exact thing? Like, where do they go? And if not, why did they make this one?
Well, I think the reason they made this one was, I mean, we talk about like remakes and reboots and sequels and whatever on this show all the time, and this is a way for. I mean, I think in all things considered, like this is the type of film that you can do a justifiable remake of, because the thing about the first Blair Witch movie is it had a $0 budget. Like this is a film that was made for next to nothing, not $0, but close to it. Yeah. So really, this answers the question of like, hey, what if you had made the movie with money? So I don't have a problem with this on its face. I don't think it's doing well enough in terms of just like its box office overall or its like critical reviews. I don't think they would make another one. I think if it was doing well, they absolutely would. Like I think this was an attempt to potentially reboot the franchise. I think this might be a standalone now.
Yeah, I think this was a way. I think you're right, Will. I think this was kind of a way to walk that line of doing kind of rebooting the franchise and kickstarting this Blair Witch verse, of movies that was going to come out. But they didn't want to just remake the first movie. They wanted to put a sequel spin on it as well, and this is what we ended up with. Unfortunately, you're right though; it's not doing very well. So I don't know where it's going to go from here.
Well, it was budgeted at $5 million, and it's made about $9.5 million so far.
It'll probably be fine.
So I'm thinking it's
somewhat profitable, but some of these do like made for 3 and then make like 15, so they make 5 times their budget. This one, maybe it'll be okay.
I'm just surprised this wasn't released closer to Halloween, to be honest. Like, why would you not capitalize on the proximity to your horror holiday? Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Unless the release schedule was already full of 2 or 3 other scary movies, like Medea's Halloween.
Oh my God, we saw that trailer last night in front of.
Yeah, amazing, huh?
So one thing is there are 2.
Ouija, Origin of Evil.
It's the new Ouija movie, and then the week after that is Rings, the sequel to Ring.
Yeah.
So it's very possible, especially with this one. If this one was in production as The Woods, and then at Comic-Con they did the kind of the switcheroo and say, "Hey, it's actually Blair Witch.
It's really Blair Witch.
Coming out this date." Like, I have a feeling they really wanted to position it to where it didn't have that, which I don't think worked out very well for it.
Could be. Well, I know that from my perspective, it was pretty much bare bitch, but it was interesting to see this movie. I'm glad we got to talk about it together. But, guys, it is late. It is very late. So we are going to go ahead and wrap with some very quick plugs. And, Jim, you are first. What do you want to plug this week?
I'm excuse me. I'm going to plug just one movie. I finally got to see Neon Demon this weekend, which I'll plug it because I think Nicholas Winding Refn, the director, is a visual stylist that's worth watching. I think his storytelling is not to my liking anyway, and but I think the Neon Demon is worth watching if seeing interesting things done on the screen in a visual way is up your alley, and you don't care so much about story. This movie did have a story. Don't get me wrong; it wasn't completely disconnected, but it was a little bit maybe leaning toward overindulgent, but it was interesting enough for a watch. So I would recommend people check out Neon Demon. It's available on iTunes.
All right, awesome. So we were talking about Star Wars earlier, and I know it's TV, but it still counts as a plug. One of my favorite Star Wars things right now is a TV show on Disney XD called Star Wars Rebels. And its first and second seasons were just fucking amazing. And they are considered part of the new Star Wars canon. Season 3 of the show returns the 24th, this Friday. And one of my favorite characters from what's known as the Star Wars like legacy non-canon tales is a character named Grand Admiral Thrawn. And he is going to be one of the main protagonists this season on Star Wars Rebels. So he's officially becoming part of the canon again, which really excites me. It's a phenomenal show. If you like Star Wars, if you like animated shows that, you know, have a kid element but have some really like dark adult stuff going on, check out Star Wars Rebels. You can catch up on the first 2 seasons on Netflix and get yourself ready to go for season 3 this Friday.
So are they replacing the Death Star with the Star Wars canon, or is this is this one developed by the Resistance to fight the Death Star?
Boom.
I would play
your dumb Star Wars question of the day.
I would play the bump, but Google isn't working, so whatever. Anyway, Will, what have you got?
So this is a little bit of a light week in terms of plugs for me, in that I've got a film festival coming up, as we mentioned a few minutes earlier, in 2 days. So I've been sort of playing more video games and watching TV and just kind of clearing the palate. But you can't keep me completely away from movie, not for too long. Today I checked out a movie on Netflix that I thought was a passable movie, probably not as strong a recommend as I would normally have here. It's this documentary called Who Took Johnny? And it takes a look at the story from like 30 years ago about this Iowa paperboy named Johnny Gosch. He's the first kid to ever appear on a milk carton. And it focuses on his story, his mother and her quest, and just sort of the impact that this had on like kind of the way we view children. Like this, you know, like kids aren't allowed to like walk home. You know, now you've got to like, you know, hover over your child at all time to make sure they don't get abducted or make sure they're safe. And a lot of that comes from this case and some of the other cases that happened around the same time. So, yeah, not the most stellar, like groundbreaking doc, but it was definitely one that kept my interest all the way through. It's called Who Took Johnny? It's on Netflix, and yeah, check it out.
All right, awesome. Well, that wraps us for this week and puts a nice shiny bow on our 200th episode. I just want to thank all of our listeners for hanging out with us tonight. Loved hearing from some of you guys live. Loved hearing from a lot of you on Facebook and Twitter leading up to our 200th episode. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about the show. One thing I want to say, guys, and listening to the old episodes, oh my god, I'm so glad we've been doing this for 200 episodes at this point, because like episodes 1 through like 17 to listen to the beginning, especially with regards to me, like my NPR voice introductions like are so awful. They're so terrible. I'm like ashamed a little bit. But you know, hey, if you do something 200 times, I guess maybe you get a little better at it. So listeners, thanks for being patient with us. Thanks for hanging out with us, sticking with us. Take it easy, everyone. We'll see you for episode 201 next week. Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.